Next up, and I actually, this guest isn't slated to start for 11 minutes, but she's here early, and I cannot miss that opportunity to have 11 more minutes with Jess. Hi.
What's up?
I'm having a launch event for my book. What?
I can't believe it.
It's nuts.
One of the questions I know you're going to ask is like, oh, who's a lovable leader? And I'm like, but I'm not allowed to say Jeff. So
no, you're not allowed to say.
But he wrote the book, so I'll have to think of another answer.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I appreciate, because you know that I don't do well with like the praise. I'm like, not for me. No, it's fine.
Yes.
But yeah,
I'm so excited for this book. Like,
Thanks.
Very excited. I have a problem. I read too many leadership and business books. I'm trying to figure out how to add a balance in my life, but
yeah,
very excited also to like see, like, just be on this panel and chat with you and all the viewers about like what it really means to be a lovable leader, because you taught me, and I'm happy to share all the things that I've learned just throughout my journey.
Yeah, I am really excited to talk about it and to hear about it because, we keep in touch. For those that are tuning in early to this, Jess worked on my team when I had True Voice Media back in the day, like 2013, 2015, something like that.
Yeah.
And we have the most epic company dance video in history, if I do say so myself.
We had a great culture, even though it was just the two of us. I think that's what mattered, right? It was like, it was my first job, my first job in the digital space. And Jeff had just taught me how to be a digital champion for our clients. And with that, there was like this element of me learning from you, but also like learning from our clients while keeping like this culture of team learning and flexibility and fun and collaborative. And so I think that's really was the beauty of what that year and a half that I worked for you. It was short time, but like such valuable time in my history.
Yeah. I mean, there's so much about your time working with me that I reflect on, and just want to acknowledge that one, I learned so much after you left by the ways that I felt like I didn't show up for you. And a lot of what I wrote in the book were ways in which I felt like I could have been better, but I just didn't know any better. And a lot of what I think I grew into as a leader over the years after that was a result of that. There was that. There was also the fact that I think I'm already about that fun life, but like you brought a new level to it. Do you remember the day that we just walked around doing Snapchats and handing out smiley faces?
Yeah. But do you know why we did that? Do you know why we did that?
Because why did we do that? Were we having just a crap day?
I think that's what's more important, right? Also in the vein of this conversation is like, we were having a rut day. We were not motivated. We were sluggish. I don't know. Maybe one of us was hungover. Who knows back then?
And it could have been either of us.
But it was just not a good day. And I think recognizing that you have bad days, not as a leader, but as a teammate. And that's when I was like, can we do something fun? Like we need to get out of this, and we need to like do something different in our day. And I think we went around and just like spread kindness to people in like, you're great on the streets of Philadelphia.
Yeah. That video is still on YouTube, I believe, somewhere. I think it's on the True Voice Media YouTube that's still up. No, that was so cool. And then I was also thinking about the holiday social. And what like a rad idea that was. I think I had bought the domain like forever ago. And then you were like, fashion drive or fashion show clothing drive. Combine the two.
In that too, like that was an idea that I had for all of those who are watching. It was just this nonprofit idea that was taking clothes that were donated from, we at the end of the year, we all go through our clothes, and we had turned it into like an event. And the event was a nonprofit event, but in that, I think it really just came from like, you gave me the flexibility and the freedom to try my ideas and figure out how they integrate into the business. And that's very important.
So that I think about that a lot, because I remember when you brought the idea to me, I don't know if I hesitated for more than like 2 seconds before I was like, yeah, let's do it.
Right.
And in some of the conversations earlier today, we've talked a lot about introspection as a leader and like self-reflection and things like that. And I think there were a lot of opportunities where you got to show me who I was as a leader, because you provided me with those opportunities. Even like the fact that the way that we met at that job fair was like very classic Jess and very classic Jeff.
Yeah.
Like it really revealed a lot about both of us. You showed up, you were one of a kind, absolute one of a kind, homemade business cards, the whole thing. And I wasn't even supposed to be there. I just was like going to keep Ben company. I was in the neighborhood and I didn't feel like working that afternoon. And like you came up, I was like, yo, this girl is like really cool. And I feel like she would be really amazing to work with. And then I called you up and you were like, yeah, sure. It worked out in such a cool way.
Yeah.
Super grateful for it, honestly.
Oh, like, I'm so glad. I really look back to those times, and like, that was my first digital job. You taught me so much, like taught me a lot in the digital space, how to think about like where the digital space is going, which I know that we both do that in our respective jobs. Like, so we're here to talk about leadership today, but all the things that I will talk about today and in leadership is coming from my expertise in the digital space, but also how to run a lean company because of working with you. It was just the two of us, like by ourselves. And if it weren't for me, you probably would have went another, like year and a half of just being like running your agency by yourself. Possibly. But it was all about taking the leap of like, how do I multiply myself and there I was. And you brought me on from that career fair a long time ago.
Yeah. Nah, so cool. Well, let's get started. Let's talk about some strategy. Let's talk about like what it looks like to be running, like, because I'll be totally candid with you. The student has surpassed the master like years ago at this point. So what you're doing in strategy and what you're doing with your employer and previous employer, like that's like next level stuff that like I didn't even have clients that I was doing that level stuff for. So you've done so much in strategy since we like, did our thing. And I showed you like the basics of how strategy works. And I showed you about digital strategy and blah, 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 blah. But like, you're like crafting strategy for an organization. And not only that, but at the same time you're doing it, you have a team. Like how big's your team right now?
I have 40 employees around the world in 7 different countries. 40 full-time employees. India, Tel Aviv, London, Spain, Canada, US. And I fucking love it. Am I allowed to curse on
this? Yeah, you can curse on my show. Yeah.
I love it. I always wanted to be a leader. So I always wanted to be a leader, but I also had this like digital passion, and that I also got like from working with you. And I wanted to figure out, you mentioned this on your last chat with Mark that I really resonated with, is like not many people think about their purpose in life. And I like really know my purpose, and my purpose is just help other people unlock their potential. And I also believe that you helped me unlock my own potential in the digital space and being a really great employee that can, remove boundaries and just like push out of the ordinary. So now throughout my career, ever since I've worked with you, I always wanted to be in the tech space. I wanted to be in the Silicon Valley space. And I now lead a team of 40. Honestly, it might be like 45 now. I'm done keeping count. But my team implements digital solutions on companies' websites and mobile apps. So like I've taken the experience that I've had in the digital space, I've migrated that to software and technology in a way that I can also help other people get better at their jobs in the digital space, but just also as a high-performing employee, as a leader of this big team. And yeah, strategy and keeping everybody aligned that's like the hardest part. And
distributed team. You don't have 40 people in a room that you get to say, here's the strategy, let's talk about whatever. You're talking a distributed team. Yeah. And sometimes asynchronous. So like you've got people that are in one time zone and another, you have to talk to them separately, not even together sometimes.
Oh yeah. And also the remote world. I felt like because I started with a team that was across countries and state lines, I learned what remote working and remote leading was a little bit before COVID happened, and it put me to an advantage, absolutely. But there's still learning, and I really am passionate to share about like how do you really lead a remote team, keeping this strategy alive and having people doing things on different time zones.
So let's start at the beginning. Like how do you even go about strategizing for the breadth of different things that you're accountable for seeing happen and the size of the team that's distributed around the world? How do you go about doing that?
Well, first, it was so overwhelming. I'm sure as any leader would know, you get into a leadership position, no matter how big your team is, you're like, holy crap, I'm now responsible for career growth, the business itself, the revenue that comes in, people's emotions. Everybody wants a raise, everybody wants a promotion. And at the same time, we just need to keep pushing forward. But also, I need to challenge people and they need to follow the vision that I set forward. So all of that was so overwhelming. It was honestly, when I took this role 2 years ago of leading the global team, I was like mentally burning out because I did not know how to start. And one thing that helped me is just, what are my themes? What are my themes that, like something as simple as that? I still give people this advice today. What are the themes that I want to run this business on? And then how do I want to run the team with those themes? And that keeps me mentally organized. And then that I can emulate that in the strategy. So that really helped. And I don't remember what those themes were at the time. But for example, helping people with their career paths, like career performance. When you can help people help themselves, they will help you run the business. And so I really firmly believe in, it's really not, the strategy is at the top, but how do you manage all of the personalities on the team that all make up the strategy leading up to the top to deliver every single thing that you need to deliver. So I have a couple people on my team that have very specific interests, and imagine that times 40. So I have really learned that everybody is not going to have the same goals in helping reach your strategy. You have to recognize that people's strengths are different. But what you need to do as a leader is, how do you capitalize on those strengths individually to get all of the tasks done? Kind of think of like a consultant in your project plan. What's your project plan that reaches the overall goal?
I love that because it resonates with me, as you probably know, because one of the things I've always been about is, let's amplify people's strengths, lean into what people are good at. Let's not worry as much about what they're not good at. Obviously it's worth looking into that. And I have some things I'd share with you that, since we work together, things that I've developed and added to like my repertoire of things. But, we always focused really heavily on like, what are your strengths? You had the Whiskey Gypsy blog when we were working together. Yeah. And I was like, oh my God, this is remarkable. Like, you could crush Pinterest with this and Instagram. Like, you just have an eye for the visual. You're an excellent writer. So like, let's find projects where you can put you on that. And neither of us were, and you probably have developed more at this point, but like, and I have a bit too, but neither of us are particularly good at like attention to granular details. Like, that's not where we exist. We exist in like let's figure out the global, where are we going, and all of the steps involved and the people needed. And we can spell out a granular plan, but we can't be accountable for watching each individual granular step.
It's true.
So yeah. So and what's interesting is that there's a lot of data to show that what a lot of people are now looking for in their jobs, and the reason they're leaving jobs, is they want managers, they want leaders who are focused on their strengths, not their weaknesses, and who are there to coach them and help them grow. So you're speaking a lot of the right sorts of things, that you're looking at your team as individuals and trying to see how you can help them grow. So I really appreciate that. Like, that's your perspective as well. And it's probably one of the reasons we've always gotten along.
I learned a lot, like in these last a few years, like managing such a big team and leading a big team. And I have to be doing something right, because not many people leave my team, and they've been with me for like 3 to 4 years. And so I don't know, but like, let's talk about it. Let's kind of dissect this and figure out like what great leaders do, so that the audience can hear.
Yeah. So talk about it. Like, what, so we stopped working together in like 2014 or 2015, I think it was.
Yes.
And you went on to go and basically like run digital at Frontier, basically.
At an airline, right?
At an airline. So like, that was like a giant move. And then, then from there you got recruited, and the rest is history. But like, talk to me about what that experience has been like. When did you first start managing people after we worked together? When did that come into you?
I think when I worked at the airline, I was working in the digital department, and I can sum it up in one way. Great company. The people were incredible, but how to lead a team for high performance and innovation was not there. And I realized that I was not a manager at the time. I was an employee, and I realized all the things that I did not feel fostered a great culture, fostered great teamwork, felt safe to share your ideas. And so I took that. I just kind of, there were some different elements and events that I learned while working at a big brand at a big corporation, which we all know what that's like, that I was like, this isn't working. So now let me figure out what does work. And so I moved over to a company called Medallia, which I've been with now for 5 years. And I have seen this company now go like public and private and private again. So we've gone through a lot of company iterations. And when you're going through a company, when you're at a big company or small company, really, that goes through a ton of changes, like you need to not let that bother your progress. And so I learned a lot about that of how do I manage a growing team that started at 2, by the way. I was the first employee of this digital team at Medallia, and now we have 40 and I'm leading that team. So over the span of 4 to 5 years, we've gone from just me as the first hire in this particular like acquisition product to 40 people globally that support like 1,000 customers. It's great and it's fulfilling, but how do I use all my learnings of being on a small team, being at the corporate company, to then leading a really great team of high performers? And let me get into it. Like one of the things around strategy, because I know that's what my section is around, that I've learned over these years is typically we all think that management and leaders need to keep the strategy close. Like we need to define the strategy, we need to manage it, we need to like dole out owners, and we need to drive it. Like it's all our responsibility. And I learned that actually like the biggest learning here is you cannot hold the strategy close to you. You cannot hold your cards too close to you. And that old way of management is the one who leads the strategy, defines it and drives it is not going to work, because that's what you hear from employees say, I want to know where our company is going. I want to know how I can help. I want to like, they want to grow in that way. They want to take on certain responsibilities to feel like they have a seat at the table. That's really it. And so that is one thing I learned. Like my first couple years, I was like, this is my vision. This is what I have to do. This is what I need the team to do. I was very going back to those themes. I was like very like headstrong in what I needed to do to run the business. And then I realized like I was burning out. I can't do everything. My managers and me can't do everything. And honestly, the team that's on the front line doing the work are the badass people with ideas every day. They see what's happening. They know what needs to be done. So that management owning the strategy is actually just creating a silo for you to not foster high developing teams, high performing teams, and the silo of like keeping your team close to where the business needs to go. So that getting feedback from your teams and like sharing, these are our goals, this is the strategy, and then actually having a discussion on how are we going to get there, and making them a part of the conversation really, I think, helps team morale and helps performance. And then it allows you to see, well, what are people's strengths? You know what? I'm going to put this guy over there to run this because he seems really passionate about that. That's going to end up driving our goal of X. So how do you utilize and activate your entire team based on their strengths to carry out that strategy? You cannot hold it close. You can't hold your cards close anymore in this world.
I like it also because it really fits in with a, you know, for lack of a better term, like an agile mindset, not necessarily agile software development, but the idea of having agility on your team. It's difficult to do that when you have one person who's like, you know, carrying the ball and everybody else is just trying to follow behind.
Oh, yeah.
But when you distribute that to your team, not only are you allowing yourself to be more agile and flexible because you're getting more sources of input, and you're also allowing yourself to be open to other sources of input.
Yeah.
But you're also opening up and being more inclusive of other ideas. And that's really important because as we well know, like no one of us has all of the answers. So opening it up to our team, I think obviously gives us the opportunity to see more vantage points. And then that's where you as a leader get to come in and really support that idea and help that person grow, but also benefit from the ideas they bring to the table.
Oh,
so
absolutely.
I like that you've taken that approach and that's been a learning that you've gotten. And not only that, but out of something that you saw wasn't working, you kind of started with the, like, I have the answer, I have the strategy, I shall hold it. Oh crap, I'm burned out. And also I'm not getting the great ideas from all these amazing people.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's like this, that's this myth that like leaders need to be the ones owning everything. And we are always right because we built ourselves and our credibility to get here. That's not true. Like you built yourself to be a leader, to use the team to drive the business, not for you to drive the business with your team doing the work. And I noticed this like from teammates asking questions. Like think about the signals that your team gives you every day and my team was giving me signals around like, where are we in relation to our goals? How are things going? I'm interested in taking on a new project. What could I focus on? Like they're asking these questions because they're not a part of the strategy. They are not, and they want to be. And so that was like a shift that I made that I think in like quarterly forums, I would bring, whether it's like a quarterly business review or just like a reset every quarter, every 3 months that I recommend everybody do is reset on this was what we originally planned on. These were the goals and tactics in which we were going to take to get there. And then figure out, is it working? And don't be afraid to hear that it's not working. And then get your team's ideas on what else could we be doing. And when you open up that two-way conversation, it becomes more of like the top-down approach of here's what we need to do, but then the bottoms-up approach of how is everybody helping achieve that? And everybody feels like they have a seat at the table.
How do you go about, because I like this kind of like retrospective type idea where you're walking people through, here's what we did, how did it work, start, stop, continue, what do we like and not?
Yeah.
How do you go about, or do you go about teaching strategic thinking through your teammates? You know, how often do you involve them? Because, you know, if I think back to our time working together, something that was always on my mind was I always thought, I'm going to train Jess with everything that I know. Whatever it is that I know, I'm going to try and teach you. And a lot of that was around, at the time, was really around strategy, how to think strategically about problems, how to build strategy, how to back your way from the goals through the tactics and lay out timelines. That was what my primary concern was when you were on my team, was like, let me teach you strategy because that's the thing I know, right?
Yeah.
How is that filtered into how you lead? Do you find yourself making that a priority in how you work with people?
It's interesting. That's a good question. I honestly don't know, but that's a good thing for me to think about as a leader. Like, how do I enable people to really like replicate my job a little bit? So I guess my answer is twofold. One, I need to do my job so well so that I am not needed. And so I need to bring my leaders into my thinking. Here's my thought process. Here's why I recommend this being the strategy, because we learned this before and this is where the business is going. So I'm seeing around a corner here. I'm trying to teach my team right now how to see around a corner.
Yep.
And understand what is not in front of us, but what is going to be 3 steps ahead of us. So taking them into my thought process is really important, because then I need them to replicate that with their teams. And so again, going back to how can I bring them on board with my thinking, understand that they may not think like me. They may like have their own things in their mind. One person may be thinking from a more product standpoint. One person may be thinking more operational standpoint. But that's the second part of the answer, which is what are their strengths? Understanding that one person and what drives them, what motivates them. How do I give them a strategy and then figure out how they fit into it so that they can then carry out that part of the strategy. Like if the strategy is drive more sales for the business or become more profitable, like this year we want to be more profitable, then I'm not going to be talking about one lane of how to be profitable to all of my managers. I'm going to be talking about what appeals to how do our operations make us profitable? You're going to take this. You're going to figure this out because operations is your strength. How does our consulting day-to-day make us profitable and how we work with clients? You're going to take this. And I think that just goes back to bigger picture, playing to people's strengths. And then when somebody does take on the leadership role, they can understand, they can now be a multiplier themselves. So the next person in line to take my job, I hope that they do the same thing. They have a vision, but they're training people to see around the corners. And they're also finding ways to utilize and capitalize on people's strengths to get the job done. And that's that.
I love it. And in the book, I talk about something that is often the job of a leader is not to show people what to do, but to show them how to think, to illuminate something that they may not have seen. And you talked about that with seeing around corners, right? To teach someone to think strategically is to show them how you thought about a thing, break down the process for them and give them that as a tool, and then ask them, what do you think about this? Here's the goal that we're trying to get to. And you kind of talked about this with delegating, like, hey, how do we make operations profitable? Here you go. And you support them by showing you how you see around corners so that they can apply that same thinking to finding the goal themselves. So I think you are actually teaching them how to think strategically by way of showing them how you think and by putting it on them.
Question though, right? Like, how do you make someone more strategic? How do you make someone a leader? That's a big question. There's so many elements, right? Like, how do you teach someone how to delegate? How do you teach someone how to have a vision? Like, just having a vision, that's really hard. But it's a whole thought process, and it really comes with experience in bad experience and good experience, looking at bad leaders, looking at good leaders, and looking at what works and what doesn't.
Yeah. And Jeff Harry said it earlier, for football teams, they practice the same drills over and over and over all week so that they can play in a 3-hour game. Right. But in business, how often do we practice these skills, like difficult conversations, teaching strategy, all these sorts of things? It's only until you get in the game and you start practicing your game reps that you actually start to see those things come into practice. So to that point, how do we teach strategic thinking? I mean, I think by starting with teaching strategy and then quizzing people and working with them and running through it and role playing and just trying to up level them by being committed to their growth. So obviously that's a thing that you're doing.
Yeah. And I think we can like come full circle here. Like, that's really what you did with me when you were managing me, is like, how do you like teach me your thinking and how you would work with a client, or how you would just manage the business, even if it was something as stupid as making an Excel spreadsheet. Like, that doesn't really matter. It doesn't matter what it is, but take me on board. And actually, there is one piece of advice I got from an incredible leader during my time in the Silicon Valley software space. And she told me, because I was taking on this big global team, and I was like, oh my gosh, how am I going to do this? And she made a comment that I really live by, and I forget that I live by it, so I want to share it out loud. She said, take the team with you. Like, bring the team on this journey of leading with you. And that was, it still resonates with me every day. Like, when I'm doing something, why am I doing it in a pocket? Why am I doing it by myself? How do I take someone on with me? How do I take more than one person? How do I take the whole team on with me to think about where we need to take the business? And when I think back to my bad leaders, they did not do that. They held their cards close to their chest because they're the boss, right?
Yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely. And I feel like so much of the book that I wrote was because I was thinking about all the bad bosses that I had. And I basically said, what's the opposite of what they did? And tried to write a book from the perspective of like, that would make for a better situation. And, I've tried to embody a lot of these as I've gone through my leadership journey, but I really appreciate the perspective that you're bringing from the experiences you've had leading a team of I've led a team of like up to like 30 something, but they were never like all my direct reports. They were just all people on the same team. And I really appreciate that, you've had the humility to go into a role like that and be open and to take the position that you don't know everything and to let that really guide you. And it makes sense now that you've explained, kind of like the take your team with you thing, then they're going to be invested in your success because you're invested in theirs and you've been open enough to let them know that you don't know everything you're doing.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And you made a comment in the last session around like caring about career development of individuals. Like, understand that even though everybody has maybe the same job, like in title on your team, no two person is the same. No two person has the same strengths, and no two person probably wants to take their career in the same way. So like, how do you understand where does that person want to go in their third step? And how do I help them get to the next step so that their third step is fulfilled because of where I helped them down here in step one?
100%. And I think another critical part of that is don't hold on to people just because you're scared of letting them go. You have to let people go when they've outgrown you. You have to let people go when they choose a different direction.
Yeah.
And you have to be there. If you cared enough to hire them, then you should care enough to support them in whatever it is that they do next. And you figure out your way around. I think that that's a critical step that a lot of leaders make the mistake of. They're like, well, why should I invest in this person if they're just going to leave? Or why should I this? Because that's what you do as a leader. Your job, you're going to sometimes run through team members because they level up and level out, or you're going to people that aren't the right fit or whatever it is. You still invest in every single one of them as if you're going to keep them forever. And you want them by your side as you try to climb the mountain.
Yeah. And going back to like visiting the strategy with your team, visiting your goals on like a quarterly basis, figuring out what's working, figure out what's not working, that actually really keeps people on your team. It's a good retention play because you are adding variety to their day. It's not always, well, we've done this. This is how we've always done it. And so this is how we're going to keep moving forward. It's let's revisit it every 3 months and understand what's going on and how it can change. Because when you can add variety to the workplace, to their day-to-day job, then you are fostering an environment of innovation. And then people feel like they're doing something different. And that's really, I think, what keeps people is they want to keep changing. They want to keep evolving. Even though it's very fair that your company as a whole is not evolving, but you as a leader of your team, you can help make things evolve, even if it's just one small pocket of the business.
Completely agree. So you have managers on your team, right? Like people that like have people under them, right?
Yes, I have about 7 to 8 managers, and then the rest of the team is dispersed around, below them. And that's why I need to replicate myself. I'm currently reading Multipliers, the book. I think I'm pretty late in the game to reading that book. I don't know why it's my first time reading it, but a lot of it is great to read, and it's a nice way for me to figure out how am I making my management, my managers of the team, how am I multiplying myself to them so that they can be multipliers to their team, and it just becomes a cycle so that whenever I do leave and say goodbye and go off to my next challenge, I'm not worried and they're not worried because I set them up for success.
So let's talk about how you're setting them up. So you've got some managers under you, and we're going to be looking through the lens of strategy, but I don't think we have to limit it to that. But how are you going about, so the reason I'm asking this is that I think being a manager and managing people is one thing. Being a manager that manages managers is a whole other thing, because now you're not just accountable for the people on your team, but you're accountable for the downstream of the people on their team. So how you train your managers and the sort of values you instill with them, how you teach them to think strategically, all of the different things that you've come up through and gotten to your position, you have certain things that are important to you that you want to see on your team. What's that look like on Jess's team in terms of the management that sits at the level beneath you or under you in the org chart? How are you guiding them towards building the type of team that can think strategically, can be agile, can create the type of culture that you didn't see in previous roles that you left?
Well, I guess let me preface this by saying, like, on a day-to-day, our job, like what we get paid for, is to be software consultants. So we need to work with our clients and be great at what we do with our clients. But how we do that and how we operate as a team of 40 software consultants can be changed and iterated on all the time. And how we work with customers can be changed all the time. So my managers they manage their own individuals. They have about like a team of 5 to 6 or 7 each on their team. And they need to first understand, how do I help this person become the best software consultant? That is table stakes. And then how do I enable this person to stretch and try new things that end up identifying certain strengths that can help us run the business? Or how can I help them in their improvements that need to be made, whether it is working with clients or run the business? So then they need to create a safe space. And I think we do this very well because I have created a safe space for the team of, this is where we're going. We're open to your feedback. We want you involved, like creating that safe space for people to get involved and share their ideas. The middle-level management needs to emulate that back in their individual conversations. They need to understand from an employee, what are you doing well and how do I stretch you? That's you individually as a professional. And what are things that you're experiencing that we could make better as a business, right? So it's like you as a person, us as a business becomes the 2 parts of conversation in our individual, like one-on-ones that my managers are having with their teammates. That information then gets brought up to our leadership meetings. And we try and understand, we're not talking about like this person's slacking off, this person's not, that's between the manager and the individual. That's not like, we don't need to talk about that. What we need to talk about is, what are we hearing from the front line? And this applies to even like if you're managing a store, right? Like, what are you hearing from the frontline employees that could help us do our jobs better? What is blocking us from doing our jobs better? those become the conversations of our meeting. So training my team, and this is because I did it with them, of how do I help you become better at your day-to-day job, what you were hired for, so that you can get a promotion and you can grow. But how do you help me tell me what the business needs to operate better? What makes your job easier? What do I need to unblock for you? That's a big part of management and leaders, is just unblocking people and again, helping get things out of their way so that they can do their jobs more efficiently.
Yeah. All of this support, all of this helping people grow and helping them develop, and being open-minded has been like a real through line in all the things that we've been talking about here. You keep bringing it up kind of again and again about keeping this open mind and really learning from your people. And, really baked into it again is humility. It's the willingness to not know something. And I think, Mark, if he's still listening, the surprising gift of doubt would really appreciate your willingness to be like that. And I think it shows a lot of courage as a leader.
Yeah.
So I only have you for a few more minutes, and then I'm going to jump to my next guest, Leanne Davey, who wrote The Good Fight, which, by the way, if I know you're a big reader of all of the different books, if you haven't read The Good Fight,
I have a list of books now after
this.
event.
Today is going to be like an amazing day of like, fill out your book list. But The Good Fight, amazing book. You should, if you have the time, you should definitely stay tuned while we talk, but phenomenal book. And in terms of like being able to navigate like every possible kind of conversation that you might have to have at work, the book is chef's kiss. It's amazing. So she's coming up next. But the last question I want to ask you, and remember, we've talked about this. You can't say me.
I can't say
it's just too obvious because we work together. But when I say lovable leader, who from your past or present comes to mind and why?
I actually don't think about individual people, but I think about certain like roles that were leaders, and I often think about professors, and I think we can all relate to that, like professors and teachers that we had in our past, in any subject. But if you think about it, and God bless educators in this country, because I know that they do not get enough credit, but if you think about it, like professors and teachers, like they are leaders in which they have a curriculum that they set. And sometimes they're just given it, just like a business gives us, like, this is what we need to do, go figure it out with your team and just do it. They're given a curriculum, but they're also shaping that curriculum and how they position it to the team. That's them telling a story to the class of like 100 people when you're in a university classroom with a professor. How do they take a curriculum and tell the story of how we're going to do that, how we're going to learn that as a group? And then, so that's the telling the vision part. That's the strategy part to your team, and getting your classroom like on board. And then everyone each gets an individual assignment. Like that assignment is trying to figure out what people's strengths are. Like, what are the individual assignments? And then bringing those assignments back to the curriculum and back to like the learnings of what we're doing and why we're here. So I think that professors, when I think about lovable leaders, like I can think about a few from my own at Temple University, but particularly like when you have a really great professor, they are activating the group. They are activating discussion. They are activating ideas. They are activating this audience to perform individually, but also as a group in the discussion of whatever that curriculum is. So I thought about this question before I came here today, and I was like, I can name off a bunch of good managers and what they do, but I don't think that's really it. I think it's more of like, who are these people that really activate? Like activate is kind of like a key word to me in my own leadership, because when you can activate an audience or a team, then you get them on the journey with you, and you can figure out how everybody like swims to the other side with you.
Jess, thank you for coming on.
Oh,
honestly, I could not imagine of having had this event without you. And I'm so grateful that you've been in my life as long as, from the time we worked together and after that, we've kept in touch and that we're still in touch. And just know that I am routinely and regularly, when I see your face come up in my feed, incredibly proud of what you've done and like the leader you've become. It's just awesome to see. And I'm so happy for you and so proud.
Well, I am so happy. And you told me a year ago you were writing this book, and I was like, duh, like, of course you're writing this book. It's the perfect persona and message for you to send to everybody who reads it. So I'm very excited. I'm so sad I haven't read it yet, but it's on pre-order. I'm ready. I can't wait till it gets on my doorstep. And like, honestly, I might cry. I might like cry and think back to when you were my leader. So I'll let you know.
Well, between us and all the people watching, I am going to be doing most likely a special edition hardcover of this book. It'll be a limited edition, and one of those copies has your name on it.
Oh, can't wait.
And will be signed.
Do I get an autograph? Do I get a Jess?
Yeah, it'll be signed. Of course.
Amazing.
Of course. And personalized, not just like my name on it.
Awesome.
Yeah. Yes, well, thank you for coming on.
So much congratulations. And honestly, I'm ready for this book and I'm ready for the next. So I envision you having a follow-up.
I got like 3-4 more in the pipeline.
Wait.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for coming on.
Bye.
Bye.